memory story, so I think it's good to get some stuff in your mind about it, just to visualize. That is a big water container. It's just like you tipped up one of those coolers from the sidelines at the soccer game. Uh, okay. Let's see, where are we gonna start today? Let us go to Google Classroom. I have a lot to show you today. And we have an assignment that we're gonna do together. And so let's go to the instructions for week 25. 25 weeks. You guys, we've been doing this for a year. Well, not you and I, but you know, like this whole online thing. It's been happening for a long time. I don't know. People are logging in. Let me check everybody off so I can get the attendance correct. All right, so we're in the middle of Othello. I want to go through some updates with you and some assignments, and then I have a little bit of a lesson for you today. I don't think it will be too long today. Just a reminder, this is a B week, so you only have a formative today and one on Wednesday, and then it's spring break, and no formatives over spring break, obviously. No assignments over spring break, really. You can kind of plan out your time, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But next week is spring break, so hopefully you get to relax, or at the very least, you get to organize your time in ways that will allow you to relax somewhat. I hope that that's true. I need to tell you that I am not going to be here the week after spring break. I think I've hinted at that a little bit previously, but my plans firmed up and I'm going to be spending spring break and the following week with my family in Michigan. It makes more sense to take a little bit more time because of the travel and all that stuff. So I will still have material for you. As a matter of fact, I already have it ready to go up here. I don't know if I will meet with you on that Monday or not when we get back on the 22nd. I think what I have planned for you next week, or that week, not next week, the week after, I think what I have planned for you is pretty self-explanatory. I might make a video, a short video or something going over the assignments with you, but I'm pretty sure that you guys can manage a week without me having a lesson on a Monday. I know that's sad. Oh, nobody's crying. But you know, if you have questions, of course I'm around. Just because I'm up north doesn't mean I'm not going to be answering your questions or responding to you. Seniors, if you're working on your community scholarship application, I'll be glad to read your essay for that and give you some feedback if that helps you. Don't worry about interrupting me. My parents go to bed at like 9 o'clock, so I'm up way later than them. So I can definitely look at things. I don't want you to think that just because I'm in Michigan that I'm off limits or that I'm not going to help you, because I'm here for you. So don't worry about that. So just watch out for that the week of the 22nd. I think I'm going to have to teach my dual classes for STC live, or I'll make a longer video for them, but I'm pretty sure that you guys can move on and do your study guide for Act 3 without me, probably. Reminder, seniors, there's going to be a deadline for the community scholarship application. You have like 2.5 weeks on that. So if you are planning to do some community scholarships application stuff, just keep in mind that March 26th seems like it's a long way away, but it's really just 2.5 weeks. So it's due the Friday we get back from spring break. So keep that in mind. Don't delay. Also, just a reminder on that application, this happens every year. There's 2 things that you can do when you're working on that application. You can save it and come back to it later, or you can submit. Submit is when you're done. So what happens every year is a lot of people forgot to submit. They finished and they put save, and they never went back in and actually submitted the application. Well, it doesn't go if you don't hit submit. So just keep in mind that if you're working on those applications and they're done, go back like the day before maybe and just double check that that you hit submit, because every year there's somebody crying because they didn't do that. So, and there's no way to go back into it. So just keep an eye on that. I'll be glad to be a recommender. So there's a spot on that application where they ask for a faculty recommendation. If you feel like you think I would be a good one for that, then you can put me, I'd be glad to recommend you. What else? Progress reports upload this Friday. So keep that in mind. We don't have too many grades. I put in the grade for study guide number 1. Study guide number 2 was due this past weekend, so I will also be putting that one in the grade book, and then I'll be grading also the formatives for this first half. Now, there's been sort of a short distance between the end of the 4th 6 weeks and the beginning. Hi, Mrs. Torres. And the beginning of the 5th 6 weeks, because we had that delay in the end of the 4th 6 weeks. So just keep in mind that there'd probably only be 3 grades for the progress report for that reason. I think that's it for updates. Is there anything that I'm overlooking there? Anybody think of anything? I'm going to be grading the Act 2 study guides this week. So those were due on Saturday. If you haven't finished that, then get those in as soon as possible, because this week we're moving on to Act 3, and I don't want you to be left behind in the dust, because one of the assignments that I will have for you the week after spring break is to watch the first part of the film version of Othello, so that you can start to get some visuals on the characters. It's about an hour. And I own the film, so if, this will be for the week after spring break. After you're done reading Act 3, you'll do the study guide, and then we'll have the film through Act 3, so that you can start to see the characters interacting. Like if you were watching a play. If we were in class, we would probably be acting the scenes out and stuff like that, but we don't have that capability. So I think the film is the next best thing, and that will be on for next time. But do keep up with things. If you start getting behind on Othello, then pretty soon we're in Act 4 and you're at the end of Act 1 and you have no idea what's going on, right? So make sure that you're keeping up with that stuff. Okay. We have some assignments for this week. Let me go through the assignments for this week, and we're going to start one of them in class today. So hopefully you have your text. If you don't have your text open or your study guides available, you might want to get those ready for when we do that assignment in a few minutes. This week, you need to do your formatives. There's one on Monday and one on Wednesday. This week is a B week, so you don't have a formative on Friday. We will also be meeting this Wednesday to do another timed essay. I've returned your first timed essay, well, not our first one, but the one from poetry. I made some comments on those and returned them to you over the weekend. Or no, like last Wednesday, I think it was. Middle of the week last week. So do look over those comments if you haven't already. This week, we're going to do another one. We're going to do one every other week, all the way up to the test. So this week, however, we're switching from the question 1 to the question 2, which is the prose question. So the first question you run into on the free response is poetry. We've been practicing that one. Now we're moving on and we're going to practice the prose one a little bit. And then later on, maybe after spring break, going into the beginning of April, we'll practice the third question, so that we have lots of practice with all 3 types, and whatever they give us, we can do it. So I want to talk a little bit today about the prose essay, how it's similar to the poetry, how it gets scored. I have a little PowerPoint for you on that, so we'll get to that in a minute. We're also going to do some interpretive questions today for the beginning part of Othello. So hopefully you've finished through Act 2, and we'll be working on Padlet a little bit for that. And then the other assignment for this week is to read Act 3. Now, I made it due on Monday the 22nd instead of this coming Monday because spring break. I'm not going to be meeting with you next week. So if you want to, you can kind of like parcel that act out so that over spring break and this week you can get that done, or you can get it all done this week and then not have any assignment over spring break. So that's kind of up to you in your own time management. But I do want to begin with Act 3 when we get back from spring break. So keep that in mind. All right, first thing up for our lesson today is this PowerPoint here. I wanted to talk, since we're switching from poetry to prose question on the AP, I wanted to talk a little bit about the prose question just so that you will know ways that it's similar to the ones that we've been doing, ways that it's different, the types of questions they ask. I want to spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes on that today so that in case you have any questions, you can ask me. We are going to meet on Wednesday to do our first prose timed writing. So do put that on your calendar that we will have class. It'll be just like 2 weeks ago when we did that poetry one. You'll come in and I will make a passage available to you with a prompt, and you will have, this time I'm going to dial it back to 50 minutes instead of 1 hour. You're going to have 50 minutes to write. So then you'll submit. So I wanted to talk about that one a little bit first. So if you want to follow along, you can click on that link. We call this FRQ because it stands for free response question. The second one is always prose. 1 year they switched it up and all the English teachers freaked out. They switched the poetry and the prose, and the kids knew what to do. All the teachers freaked out. Okay, so the prose analysis is very similar to the poetry analysis, and so a lot of it carries over from the previous ones that we've been doing. What's different is that the prose analysis is going to ask you to respond to a piece of fiction. So it will be a segment from a novel, a passage from a short story. Sometimes it's a play. That's kind of rare, but it does happen that it's a segment from a play. But it won't be the whole thing because it will be from a longer work. So they'll take something out of, like a section out of something like the Metamorphosis or Othello, and they will just take the excerpt and put the excerpt there on the passage. That will be your passage. You are not expected to know the work. In other words, you're only responding to what they put on the page. So you don't have to worry about if you read the prompt question and it says, in this excerpt from Henry VIII by William Shakespeare, you don't have to freak out and say, I've never read that, because you're only asked to respond to the section that they have there. So don't worry too much if it's something. As a matter of fact, they tried to put things on the test that you haven't read because that would give people an advantage. Once or twice it has been a complete but very short story, like 1 page, page and a half, but for the most part, it's a short passage. But it will be fiction, not a poetry, so it'll be in paragraph form. Here are some similarities between the prose analysis and the poetry analysis. So these are the things that aren't changing between the analysis that we've been doing and the one that we're going to be starting up. The time is the same. On the AP test, you should be spending about 40 minutes. We're working down toward that, right? As we work into April, we'll be getting closer and closer to the 40-minute mark on our practices so that you can practice that. The structure of the prompt is exactly the same way that we've talked about before, and I'll show you some sample prompts in a second. The task is the same, it's analysis, so it's just that instead of analyzing poetry, now you'll be analyzing a prose passage. And the scoring is the same. The rubric is virtually the same for the prose as it is for the poetry, and I'll show you the rubric too, because I know that helps you when you're writing to be thinking about all the points and how you can gain the points to 6. Matter of fact, here it is right here. Here is the rubric. You can click on this if you want to save a copy of this into your Google. You can click on it, but basically you can see that the first section is, oops. Okay. The first section is the thesis point. Is there a thesis? Is it defensible? Is it not? Does it provide just a summary of the prompt, or does it have its own original thought? Most of you have been getting the thesis point since first semester, so I'm not too worried about anybody on that point. Then row B is about evidence and commentary, same as poetry. How much of detail can you go into about your thesis, about your claim that you're making, and how consistent and connected is your commentary back to the thesis? So most of you right now are in the 2-3 range there. So we're gradually moving people up. I would like to see more people in the 3 range. That's a little more comfortable, because that virtually means that you'll be making at least a 4 on the exam. Some of you are already working in the 4 range over here, and now it's just about being consistent. Now it's about experience practicing different types of prompts. So those of you who have been making 5s and 6s on the practices. And then down here, the sophistication point, same thing. If you can do some sort of really insightful analysis, if you notice the complexities between characters, or you have some sort of marvelous style or an alternative interpretation, then that's how you get the sophistication point. I'm going to do a presentation after spring break, probably the beginning of April, on the sophistication point, because I know some of you are kind of like, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. And so it's kind of like, what could I do to be more consistent with getting that extra point? And so I want to address that. So I'll be talking about that coming up. So make a copy of that if you want to have it. All right, there are 4 basic types of questions that they will ask you for prose on the Q2. They will give you a passage and ask you to characterize a complex setting, or a person, a relationship, or an experience. And I think we've already seen the experience one, right? When some of you chose to do that Walcott poem when we were doing our first poetry analysis, and that asked you to analyze the experience, but that was in a poem. So they might ask you the same sort of thing in a prose question. I think probably the most common thing is to characterize a person or a relationship, but more and more I've been seeing the experience one on the exam for Q2. So they're all about characterization. It's just about what the passage focuses on and what they're going to ask you to analyze about that passage. But those are the 4 basic ones. We've practiced these skills multiple times, so nothing new. Okay, this slide is about how the prompt is going to look when you see it. So they've already given us, College Board has given us the way that the prompt will be worded. The only thing that's missing are the details of that particular passage. So everything in black here is exactly what you will see on the test. And everything that's in color here is something that they will insert based on, who the author is of that particular passage. So it will be something like this. The following excerpt is from some author's short story or whatever, and then the title of it, published in the year of publication. Why do you think they give you the year of publication on here? Because they didn't always do that, and now they do. Any ideas on that?
Maybe it's to kind of adopt the mentality that kind of was during the time, maybe.
Yeah, because if there's something about slavery and it's written in 1850, and you know enough history to know what was going on at that time, then you can maybe use that as part of your interpretation, right? So that happened on the poetry one, the one that we had about modern love. Do you remember that one that we did on our last practice? On that one, a lot of people missed that it was written in 1860 something. And they were writing about how dismal modern love is, thinking that it was about 2021. But it was written 150 years ago. So the idea of modern love is historical in that passage. So lots of times, the year that it was published is significant in our understanding of the piece. It doesn't mean that you have to focus on it in your essay, but you can just file it away in your mind to say, oh, okay, we're talking about modern love in 1860. And that's a totally different thing than modern love in 2021, I imagine. So do pay attention to that publication in this passage, and then they'll give you something that's happening, that background stuff that we talked about in our prompt analysis previously. Then they'll say, read the passage carefully. They always say that. Then in a well-written essay, analyze how whatever author uses literary elements and techniques to, and then it will be something prominent about the passage. So really the wording is the same in the prompt. There's always the background, then there's the task, and giving you the option to choose elements and techniques. They will not give you any elements and techniques. They used to do that, but they don't do that anymore. So you're free to choose whichever elements and techniques you think are most prominent in order for the author to convey or portray or develop whatever they want you to look at in that passage. Remember that we said, because you can use this right away on the practice on Wednesday, whatever they're asking you to look for, that's where you have your blinders on. There could be something really cool that they do over here. Maybe there's a really interesting metaphor, but if I can't connect it to what they're asking me to write about, I have to say bye and I have to let it go. and I have to just focus on what they're asking me to write about. Many of you did a very good job on that on the poetry practice that we did last time. It was really well focused. Okay, so you can always come back to this one to kind of like make sure that you understand how the question's going to be asked. All right, so let's look at an example of what you're going to see on Wednesday for the practice. This is the most recent one. Last year, I don't know if you guys took the test for the language exam, but last year they did one question because of the whole lockdown thing, and it was just one written question and that was it. This year, that's not the case, but this is the most recent one of the full exam. So this one is from 2019, and you can see how it's set up here, just like the poetry one, and then the passages here. If you click on it, it will open in your Googler. So this is before they changed the idea that they could give you literary elements. So instead, they will just say how the author uses literary techniques to portray the complex experience of two sisters. So this is an experience question. If you wanted to kind of prime yourself for Wednesday, you could look at this one and maybe think about how would I start answering that question, or what would my thesis statement be? But you can see they're giving you the year. They're telling you that it's a novel. They're giving you the author. And they're not really giving you a whole lot of background except the complex experience of two sisters named Penelope and Irene within their family and society. They don't really tell you anything else about their family or about their society. So it's up to you to interpret that as you read the passage. So then the question would be, what is the experience of the two sisters in their family and their society? And when I can answer that, then I have a good claim or a good thesis for my paper. That's what it's going to look like. It's going to be about a page. Notice that there are sometimes footnotes. If there are footnotes, definitely refer to them, because they only do that if they think it will help you. If they think that you would be at a disadvantage if you didn't know that definition or that reference, especially in older works. This one is from 1885, so it's over 100 years old. This one, there's some words or maybe some phrases or things that are old-fashioned that you might not know, and you don't want to jump into any conclusions about that. So that one's there. We're not going to go through it today because you've written enough practice ones, but you can definitely use that for practice before Wednesday if you would like. Oh, I hit it again. I don't need to open it again. Okay, I think that's it for all the slides. Are there any questions about what we're going to be doing on Wednesday then for our practice? You can put them in the chat or you can unmute. I know a lot of you are really looking forward to practicing. I know that a lot of you are kind of like, oh, another practice. But you know, I just feel like the more we can be exposed to the time frames and the more that we can be exposed to the different types of questions, the more prepared that we'll be. And we had a good amount of success last year with that result. As soon as we went on lockdown and we knew that we were teaching remotely, that's what I started doing. We did it practice a week. And I kept giving feedback and kept helping everybody and coaching everybody through the process. So I feel like it was a good process and we should continue with it. All right, I'm going to close that one out and go back to the classroom then. And we can switch over to Othello. I will be grading your Act 2 study guide this week, so you can expect to have those back. Most of you are doing a very good job with your study guides, very thorough. I'm hoping that the study guides are helping you, maybe not helping you read the material, but to go back through the material after you've read it and pick up on some things that you might not have seen originally. That's the intent of those study guides. So if you want to, do y'all want to go back to study guide 2? Is there anything that was lingering on study guide 2 that you want to talk about? Let me open it real quick right here. We just turned these in, so are there any parts of it that you want me to talk about? You can put the question number in the chat if you like, if there were any that you wanted me to spend some time talking about. Number 4? Okay. Number 4, how is the weather symbolic? Okay, well, at the beginning of Act 2, it's kind of good that I have this picture here because we can imagine a huge, like, stormy sea and waves and like those clouds that happen like almost before a hurricane. And as Othello and Iago and Desdemona and Emilia are all making their way on different ships to Cyprus, Othello and Desdemona are not on the same ship because Othello has to be there with all of his soldiers and stuff like that. They arrive through this storm, and when they arrive in Cyprus, they are told pretty much right away, and we're told that the battle isn't even going to happen because all of the Turkish ships sunk in the storm. So storms, I think you remember from your summer reading, weather and storms and seasons and all those things can be highly symbolic in literature. So if there's a storm, then usually there's something coming. There's something that's coming up that we need to watch for. And at first we start thinking, oh, well, how awesome. They're not going to have their battle. They don't have to have a fight. But maybe the storm isn't about the battle. Maybe the storm is more of a personal one. And, that gets cleared off very quickly. Deus ex machina, right? The idea that okay, we're going to war. War's over because the people all drowned. And, there's never really a war. So that gets handled immediately. And I think that the storm that happens at the beginning of Act 2 is probably symbolic of what's to come in terms of the turmoil in the relationship between Othello and Desdemona. So watch out for that as you read Act 3. As a matter of fact, my directions for you on Act 3 are to pay attention to the changing relationships between the characters. So that can be stormy, and there's going to be some disruption. And anytime there's a big change in the weather, there's a big change coming up for the characters. Hopefully that answers number 4. Number 11 is the next one. Number 11, explain how Iago undermines Cassio, Rodrigo, and Othello in multiple ways in this scene. Okay, so Iago is undermining everybody because he wants to get back at Othello for this perceived slight. Iago had wanted, remember, to be the next lieutenant in command with Othello, but Othello gave the job to Cassio, who is not as experienced as Iago is. So what Iago starts doing in Act 2, Scene 3 is he starts to suggest very slightly that something is not right in the relationship between Desdemona and Cassio. They're friendly, they're platonic friends. And he starts to see them sitting next to each other and talking, and he starts to make something ugly and nasty out of it. And he doesn't come right out and say it. He just sort of says, oh, that's weird. Cassio was sitting with your wife. And then he leaves Othello to kind of put 2 and 2 together and go, Cassio's sitting with my wife. So what? Why do you think that's weird? Oh, I wonder why he thinks that's weird. And then it sort of plants the seed in his mind that there could be something going on there. Right? So that's how he's undermining Cassio and Othello. The way that he's undermining Rodrigo is that Rodrigo tells him he's out of money. Rodrigo says, I've given you all my money. Have you delivered all the jewels that you were supposed to buy for Desdemona? And Iago kind of says, oh, well, I'm sure she'll be getting them soon. Of course, he's been keeping the money himself. So he's undermining Rodrigo in that he's bleeding him dry in his whole fortune, just so that he keeps him on the hook, telling him, oh, I'll get you with Desdemona. But it's obvious that Desdemona is not going to go with him. She's married to Othello. But Iago's so convincing and so devilish that he's able to convince Rodrigo, oh, it's right around the corner. Any day now, you're going to be, in rapture with her, and she's going to leave her husband for you. I just know it. And so he's stringing Rodrigo along, and Rodrigo literally says, I have no more money. You took all my money. Where's my wife? and so Iago is going to ruin him too. I'm not going to tell you how because no spoilers. I want you to be reading along. But yeah, Rodrigo, sad collateral damage in this play. All right, the next one, number 13. What does Cassio's situation at the end of the scene say about his character and the power of Iago's plans. Well, first you have to know Cassio's situation at the end of the play, I mean, at the end of that scene. So at the end of the scene, Cassio has been fired by Othello. Does anybody know why?
He got in a fight with Rodrigo and some gentleman.
Right, because Iago pushed him to it, right? Iago pushed Rodrigo to have a fight with Cassio. And he said, Desdemona is in love with Cassio. And if you get rid of Cassio, then you can have her, because he wants Cassio to disappoint Othello and fall out of favor with him. Othello has told Cassio, I don't want you drinking at this celebration. The people have a big celebration because they're not going to have to go to battle and to celebrate Othello and Desdemona's wedding. And Othello says to Cassio, I don't think we should be drinking. Let's still stay on guard. You never know what would happen. We need to be upstanding citizens. And Cassio is convinced by Iago to drink and have some party moments. And Cassio gets drunk. And so when Rodrigo attacks him, he attacks him back and ends up killing the governor. Cassio ends up killing the governor of Cyprus, Montano. And so that's not good politically. So when Othello hears word of that, he immediately has to fire Cassio, and that will cause a big rift and a big problem. But Iago the whole time is like, with his little plotting hands, oh, that's going to be great for my planning. So what does it say about Cassio as a person? He probably could have been better about following the guidelines of his general. But it says that the power of Iago's plans are superior to his own willpower, to Cassio's willpower. And of course, Cassio doesn't know that Iago is plotting against him, but it does set up the idea that Iago's power is like a freight train, and he has the power to manipulate people and cause massive destruction in their lives. And the whole time they still believe that he's honest. They call him Honest Iago all the way to the final scene. So that's some pretty evil stuff. If you can do all of the things and all the machinations that Iago is presenting and making happen, and still everybody believes that you're honest. That's the person to watch out for in life, right? That two-faced person. Hopefully I answered those questions. Are there any others on the list? I know that you already turned this in, but sometimes it's good to talk about the ones that you might have questioned. Number 3. Number 3, in what ways does Act 2 intensify the conflicts presented in the exposition? Okay, yeah, these questions before the scenes are just designed to kind of like their overall questions. So when we think about Freytag's pyramid, right, and we think about exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution, Act 2 is the rising action. So we should see some intensification of some of the plot lines that we saw laid out for us in the exposition in Act 1. One of them I think that you probably should have mentioned, and most obvious, is that Iago has really gone into overdrive in his attempts to make Othello look bad. So we start to see more of his plans and his evil, like behind the scenes manipulations, and that makes things more complex. And what adds to that complexity is that nobody really knows that he's doing it. But he lays these little comments down, and oh, I wonder why Cassio is telling Desdemona a secret. That's weird. Or my lord, I wonder why Cassio left just now. Oh, it's probably nothing. And so all those little things that he kind of sets up are going to pay out later on. But that's the intensification of the conflict. As we start to see him plotting against Othello more and more and more, that becomes more intense. I would say that's probably the most obvious one for number 3. Okay, well, I'll have a look at those study guides this week and give you some feedback. Most of you all do a really good job on your study guides though, so I'm not too worried about it. The last thing I want to do today is to prepare for, let me go back to 25 here, is to get started on one of the assignments for this week. So if I go back to the instructions here, one of the assignments is some interpretive questions for Othello Act 1 and 2. If you go down to the assignment that says interpretive questions here, I want to get you started on that and kind of explain it to you. We worked with interpretive questions first semester. These are the types of questions where I'm asking you to come up with questions about what's going on in the play or the novel or whatever. I think we did some for Metamorphosis. But the idea is that you would come up with a question that doesn't have an easily handy answer, something that you really have to think about, and maybe there would be different opinions on the answer to that question. It should have multiple possible answers and help us get at the meaning of the work. So, we don't want to say, what is Othello's last name? I don't even think he has, the Moor is his last name. But he doesn't have one, and that's not getting us to some sort of meaning. But there are some examples on this page, and I did include that here on the assignment. So if you need to go back and remember what we mean by interpretive questions, and I'll give you an example right now, then you can do that. What I want you to do sometime before Saturday, because it's due on Saturday, you don't have to wait until Saturday to do it, is click here on this Padlet. Let me make sure everybody can get in there. If you can click on it, then I'll know that you can access it. Should be good to go. I want you to come up with 2 interpretive questions for the parts of Othello that we've read so far. So through Act 2, because we're just starting to read Act 3 this week. Is there anybody who can't get into the Padlet? You can put a message. Let me know. I put the directions here again, just so that they would be handy, and a link to that interpretive question guide sheet. But I want you to post 2 interpretive questions, and then I want you to reply to 2 of your classmates, so that you guys are kind of having a little discussion about some of the more perplexing ideas that are happening in the play. And they can be simple questions that are provocative. For example, what if I posted something like, I'm thinking back to Act 1, why does Desdemona want to go with Othello to Cyprus? I mean, I don't think that many women, especially high-born society women, would want to go off to war, even if their husband was the general. So there could be multiple answers to that question. I could go back into the end of Act 1 where she asks to go with him and start speculating about why she might want to go with him. What would be a possible answer to that? Why would Desdemona want to go with Othello to Cyprus when they're going off to war?
Maybe she is. Sorry, maybe she doesn't want to be home anymore. Like, get away from her parents.
Okay, yeah, she married Othello just that night, right? That she decides she wants to go to Cyprus. So maybe she just wants to go ahead, and her dad puts up a big fight about that. Remember in the with all of the, what are they called, the governors or the high society men, he argues and says that Othello tricked her into marriage and so on. And she says, I forget her exact words, but she says, I do note a divided duty. I know that I'm honor bound to you as my dad, but now I have a husband. And she kind of lays it out that she's got to move from, being a daughter to being a wife. And there's that scene where she explains that, and her dad's there. So yeah, I could see how you might put, and if you were working, then you could put in where it says add comment. So if you're replying to that, then you can click there and you could put in your response to that question. So you might put that she wants to make a clean break, make it clear to her family that she's moving into her adult life with Othello. There could be other reasons. What's another reason? Did anybody think of anything else?
Maybe she just wanted to be with him.
They just got married, right? They just got married like that night. So, I mean, like, who wants to get married and then a few hours later say bye, you know, if you don't have to? So maybe, yeah, maybe it's about, you know, separating herself from her family, but also she doesn't want to be apart from him. They're desperately in love in Acts 1 and 2, until the end of Act 2, kind of. So they're, you know, they have that pure, innocent, just married love, and maybe she just doesn't want to be apart from him, right? So you could then post there, you can respond to each other, and so then it will just start to create a chain going down of everybody's responses. So what I want to see from you this week is 2 posts. So think about, what are some questions that you were thinking about while you were reading and you're not sure that you've resolved them, or things that you're actions that you're not sure why somebody did something, and let your classmates kind of come in with some ideas about why that might be. And so do 2 posts and then 2 responses, and that's going to be a grade. It won't be on the progress report because those are due on Friday, but it'll be a grade in the 5th 6 weeks. So be thoughtful and insightful as you're responding. Any questions on how to do that? Everybody has access, right? You should be able to, do you see a pink plus over here? Then you should be able to add something once you think about it. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know why it says anonymous though. If it says anonymous above your name, make sure you put your name on the post somewhere, just so that I can give you credit for it. I don't have anybody named anonymous in my grade book, so. I don't, if I did, then they would be getting a lot of points throughout the year, I gotta tell you. Yeah, there you go. That's a good one. Why was Cassio not appointed to the position of general? The text doesn't directly say that, but there are some hints. So it should be a question that we have some hints about in the text. Exactly. I think you get it. All right, so just to review before we sign off for today on the instructions for this week. Your assignments are the formatives. We have the timed prose essay on Wednesday, the interpretive questions, and then for Monday the 22nd, make sure that you've read Act 3. So that's a longer term assignment. But I'm telling you now so that you have time and you can decide if you want to do it over spring break or if you want to get it done beforehand. All right, any questions on the assignments? I should see everybody back here same time for the timed essay on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to seeing you all then, okay? All right, have a good day. See you later.
All right, bye, Miss. Have a good day.
Bye.